The first bomb falls. The quiet hum of progress is silenced in an instant. It had been a peaceful morning on Titan, or so it seemed. In the heart of the bustling colony, nestled beneath the icy crust of Saturn's largest moon, humans went about, their daily routines. The construction drones hummed overhead, repairing the domed colonies while space cargo ships docked with fresh supplies. Titan was humanity's greatest achievement, a thriving outpost on the edge of the solar system. Life, once considered impossible in the cold, inhospitable expanse of space, had now flourished. Titan's vast landscapes shimmered with promise, as city lights twinkled against the backdrop of Saturn's swirling rings. Then, without warning, everything changed. The silence was shattered by the deafening sound of an explosion. At first, it was just a rumble, a small tremor like an earthquake. But then the sky above Titan's largest city, New Syrtis, cracked open in a fiery bloom of light. The air shimmered with the force of the blast as a shock wave rippled across the colony. The ground buckled, and massive steel structures, once towering symbols of human ingenuity, crumpled under the pressure. A single blinding flash lit the heavens, and Titan's once thriving city was gone. The transmission came in from Earth a few seconds later, crisp and clear, but the voice on the other end was frantic, a tremble in the words. Titan's gone. There's no signal from the surface. It's gone. Jackson Reeve, sitting in the dim command center of Crucible Base, froze. The flickering image on the holographic display showed nothing but static where Titan's vibrant lights had once been. He stared at the screen, his mind struggling to comprehend what he had just seen. Gone? A flash of fire. Cities reduced to nothing in a heartbeat. It was impossible. Titan was humanity's crown jewel, a testament to mankind's resilience, an outpost in the cold void where hope had taken root. But now, it was a smoldering wreckage, a crater where life had once thrived. Jackson's heart raced, his breath shallow. He needed answers. "Jackson!" came a shout from behind him, pulling him from his daze. Sergeant Mara Torres, one of his most trusted officers, stood at attention, her face pale. "Sir, Mars is reporting similar attacks, Europa too. We're getting scattered reports, but nothing concrete. It's chaos." "Get me the comms feed from Earth," Jackson snapped. His voice was tight, his throat dry. He had seen destruction before, but this was different. It wasn't a natural disaster. This was an attack, coordinated, precise, and brutal. "Sir!" Mara's voice was strained as she typed furiously on the console. The hologram flickered again. This time, a voice broke through the static, but it was too distorted, too garbled. The sound of crackling fires and the occasional scream echoed through the transmission. Then, just as quickly as it had started, the feed was cut. Only static remained. Jackson turned to face the others in the room. His team had gathered, eyes wide, breath quick. He could feel the pulse of uncertainty spreading like a virus. No one knew who had done this or why. But one thing was clear. The peace of the colonies, the hope of a new human civilization on the far reaches of the solar system, had been shattered in the blink of an eye. "Prepare the fleet," Jackson ordered, voice steady despite the rising panic in his chest. "We're deploying to Earth's colonies. I want to know what happened. I want to know who did this." But deep down, a growing dread gnawed at him. This was no ordinary attack, no random strike from space pirates or rogue factions. This felt calculated, an attack against humanity's very future. The colonists were not just a military outpost. They were symbols of Earth's power, of their place in the stars. Who would dare? And then, as if to punctuate the question, a low rumble vibrated beneath the base. Jackson glanced down, his hand instinctively gripping the edge of his chair as the trembling grew stronger. Beneath them, deep in the heart of the earth, something ancient stirred, something vast and old. A warning bell began to toll in the back of his mind. Was it possible? A distant, ominous hum echoed in the depths of Crucible Base, one that no one else seemed to hear. A tremor of dread prickled Jackson's skin. The old Titans were stirring. The sound of the first bomb had silenced humanity's peace. Now, as the tremors continued, Jackson knew with eerie certainty. Earth's darkest hour was only beginning. The forgotten guardians of Earth stir from the depths. The tremors deep beneath Crucible Base were no mere aftershock. The base itself, a marvel of human engineering, was designed to withstand planetary shifts, but the vibrations felt unsettlingly different. It was as if the Earth itself was shaking off a century's worth of dust, awakening from a long slumber. Jackson stood at the command console, staring at the seismic readings flickering on the screen. His breath caught in his throat as the tremors grew more intense. "What's happening?" he demanded, his voice rising. His team exchanged confused glances, their faces a mixture of disbelief and mounting anxiety. Mara Torres, her brow furrowed in concentration, quickly typed in commands. "Sir, the source isn't any nearby fault line. It's deeper, much deeper." Her voice trembled as the data scrolled in front of them. "It's coming from beneath the Earth's crust." Jackson's heart skipped a beat. Beneath the surface? That was impossible. The technology needed to create this kind of disturbance would be... A sudden realization hit him cold and sharp, his eyes widened. The Titans, the ancient war machines, the giants of Earth's forgotten past, built in the earliest days of human expansion. They were buried, hidden away in the deep underground bunkers. They had been abandoned, sealed off after the end of the First Colonization War. The Titans had once been humanity's greatest weapons, immense biomechanical giants meant to defend Earth in the event of an existential threat. But over time they were forgotten, their existence dismissed as a relic of a bygone era. But now it seemed that something had triggered them to wake. "Get me the underground schematics for Titan Facility 1, Jackson ordered, his voice urgent. He felt his pulse quicken as the room fell into silence. The Titans had been designed with an ancient failsafe, a deep, dormant code, activated only in the event of an existential threat to humanity. A threat like this one. Mara didn't hesitate. Her fingers flew across the console, accessing data long hidden in layers of secured files. The holographic screen blinked to life, displaying detailed blueprints of vast, subterranean bunkers, lined with reinforced walls of alloyed metal. The scale of the underground complexes was overwhelming, stretching for miles beneath the Earth's crust. A new vibration pulsed through the base. This one wasn't just a tremor, it was a deep, resonating thrum that vibrated in Jackson's chest like the beat of a drum. His eyes narrowed as the first wave of realization hit him. The Titans were rising. Outside the base, the sky darkened as clouds formed in swirling vortexes. The air felt thick with tension, as if the very atmosphere was holding its breath. Jackson and his team scrambled to the surface, standing on the observation deck as the Earth itself seemed to groan in protest. And then, in the distance, it appeared, a massive silhouette emerging from the deep, surrounded by towering plumes of dust and debris. A Titan. The colossal figure rose from the Earth like a giant slumbering from a forgotten age. Its massive legs, thick with centuries of rust, groaned under its weight as it tore through the rocky Earth. Massive arms reached upward, slowly stretching after its long stasis. The Titan's head, adorned with a jagged crown of metal, turned toward the sky, its red eyes glowing ominously as though the machine was waking from a terrible dream. Jackson stood frozen, his gaze locked on the giant. The visuals were overwhelming. The Titan was enormous, its size dwarfing even the tallest skyscrapers on Earth. As it moved, the ground beneath it buckled and cracked, trees uprooted and entire mountainside ridges collapsed. The raw power emanating from it was palpable, its every motion sending a shockwave that reverberated for miles. "It's real," Mara whispered, her voice thick with awe and fear. Jackson's heart hammered in his chest. He had read about the Titans in history books, heard whispers of their existence in the most secretive corners of military archives. But to see one, to witness its sheer, unfathomable scale. It was something beyond comprehension. "Activate the emergency protocols," Jackson said, his voice steady, though his insides were a storm. The Titan was not yet in combat mode, but it would be soon. "Prepare all ground forces. If these things are coming to fight, we'll need everything we've got." But even as Jackson spoke, a sinking feeling gnawed at him. What if we can't control them? The Titans had been built for a time of desperation, a time when humanity faced annihilation. Could they be trusted? Were they truly a gift or a dangerous relic that should have been left buried? The Titan's colossal foot lifted again, and the base quaked once more as it took its first steps. Jackson's gaze shifted from the titanic figure to the darkening horizon beyond. Who, or what, had triggered them? The question echoed in his mind, but it was swallowed by the deafening sound of the Titan's roar as it rose higher, its immense form silhouetted against the reddening sky. Humanity's most ancient weapon had awoken, and with it, the haunting certainty that the Earth was no longer safe. Something far darker had come to claim the stars. And now, the Titans were marching. When the Titans march, the Earth shakes. The Titans' footsteps reverberated across the land, each step shaking the very foundations of the Earth. Jackson stood at the command center, his fingers trembling on the edge of the console as he watched the giant move through the devastated landscape. The sight was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, like watching a living mountain walk across a battlefield. "This is insane," Mara muttered, her eyes glued to the holographic display, tracking the Titan's progress. The image zoomed out to show the sprawling landscape below, with the towering behemoth leaving deep, jagged scars across the surface. Each step cracked the earth, sending waves of dust and debris into the air, and the ground shook like the onset of an earthquake. Jackson's breath caught as the Titan moved into the remains of a once thriving military complex, a massive research installation on the outskirts of the region. The base had once been a symbol of humanity's strength, but now it was nothing more than a smoldering ruin. The Titan's footfall crashed into the remnants of a large observation tower, its colossal weight smashing the structure into dust. The scene on the hologram shifted rapidly, showing the crumbling buildings and the sudden eruption of smoke and fire. "Sir," Mara said, voice tight, "the Titan is moving directly toward the eastern defense grid. If it reaches those power cores, we won't let it," Jackson snapped, cutting her off. His mind raced as the enormity of the situation set in. The Titan wasn't just stomping through the ruins. It was heading straight for Earth's most vital military infrastructure. This was no accident. The Titan was programmed to seek out and destroy humanity's key defensive positions. It was as if it knew exactly where to go. A low mechanical growl hummed from the depths of the Titan's metallic frame as it lumbered onward. Jackson could see the flickers of its weapon systems activating. The Titan's arm raised, a massive cannon of some kind emerging from its shoulder. The air around it crackled with energy, and then, boom, a blinding flash of light lit up the sky. The cannon fired, a massive bolt of energy that streaked toward the military complex. The impact was deafening. In an instant, the eastern defense grid vanished in a fiery explosion, its towering pylons and shields disintegrating into a massive ball of flame and debris. The force of the blast sent shockwaves through the atmosphere, knocking out power in several nearby cities. The visual was stunning. Shockwaves rippled across the landscape, flattening forests and sending columns of dirt and fire into the air. Jackson gritted his teeth, his hands clenched into fists. The Titan had just crippled one of humanity's last lines of defense. "Deploy the fleet," Jackson ordered, his voice sharp with urgency. He couldn't afford to let this giant continue its rampage unchecked. If they didn't act quickly, they'd lose everything. "We need to intercept it before it reaches the next target." He turned to Mara, his eyes burning with determination. "Ready the battle drones, and get me a direct line to Commander Ross. I want the fleet in the air now." Mara's fingers flew across the console, her expression focused. "Yes, sir." Jackson's thoughts raced as he watched the holographic display flicker and shift. The Titan was moving fast, its massive strides covering miles in mere minutes. The ground was torn apart beneath it as it headed toward the next military complex. The cityscape grew distant in the rear view, leaving nothing but smoldering remains. But then, just as Jackson began to give the order to launch the fleet, the Titan paused. Its massive frame stood still, as if listening. The hum of its systems grew softer, and for a moment the battlefield fell into an eerie silence. Jackson froze, his senses on high alert. Something was wrong. The Titan's movements were too deliberate, too purposeful. And then, in the distance, something shifted. A dark shape appeared in the sky, descending rapidly. Jackson's pulse spiked. The Titan was no longer alone. A fleet of sleek, angular ships, far too advanced to be human, dipped from the clouds like vultures descending on a carcass. Their weapons shimmered with deadly intent, their hulls reflecting the red glow of the dying sun. The enemy ships, perhaps hundreds in number, swept in from above with surgical precision. Jackson's stomach sank as the realization hit him like a punch to the gut. This was not just an attack. The Titans were not just a response to Earth's enemies, they were part of a larger, far more calculated strategy. The alien forces had arrived and they had come prepared. "Engage the fleet," Jackson ordered, his voice thick with determination. "We can't let them link up with the Titan. Bring the drones online now." The battle erupted in a flash. Fire, smoke, and the roar of engines filled the sky as humanity's forces clashed with the alien invaders. Jackson watched through the command center's viewport as the fleet scrambled to intercept. Drones zipped through the sky, launching missiles and firing rapid bursts of plasma into the oncoming ships. The skies were alive with the roar of weaponry, but the alien ships were too fast, too agile. They weaved through the firestorm, their shields absorbing impacts with unnerving ease. One ship veered into the path of a drone, and with a flash of light it was obliterated in an instant. Jackson's breath quickened. The fleet was struggling. The Titans were already overwhelming, but with the aliens on the ground and in the air, they were outmatched. The massive Titan that had first emerged from the Earth raised its arm again. This time the energy cannon mounted on its shoulder began to glow ominously. Its aim was true. The next target, Earth's last bastion, the capital city of New Berlin. "Move. Now," Jackson barked, desperation clawing at him. The world seemed to slow as the Titan aimed, and in that brief moment, Jackson knew. If they didn't stop it, humanity was finished, and the cannon fired. The Titan's roar echoes through the sky as humanity's final hope hangs by a thread. Jackson's heart pounded in his chest as the energy cannon on the Titan's massive shoulder glowed with a menacing hum. Time seemed to stretch out before him. The impending blast like a ticking clock, its seconds numbered. The massive form of the Titan towered over the horizon, and the city of New Berlin lay directly in its path, unaware of the impending destruction. Jackson could already imagine the devastation, the streets turned to rubble, the heart of human civilization reduced to dust. They had no time to waste. "Commander, the fleet's already engaged in combat with the alien ships," Mara called out, her voice shaking with urgency. The battle overhead was chaotic, but Jackson didn't need to look up to know that they were losing the skies. "We can't stop it with the fleet alone," Jackson roared, his hands slamming against the console. "Get me a direct line to the defense towers now." Mara's fingers flew across the screen, tapping into emergency channels. Jackson's mind raced, calculating the limited time they had left. The Titan's cannon was charging, a burst of crackling energy gathering at its tip. Every second that passed brought them closer to annihilation. The weapons array in New Berlin wasn't built to handle something of this scale. It was meant for raiders, not an ancient war machine of this magnitude. "Sir, the direct line is open," Mara said, her voice now steady but laced with fear. "It's General Ross on the line." Jackson didn't waste a moment. "General, listen to me. The Titan is targeting New Berlin. The energy cannon is locked on. If you don't activate the city's main defense shield, it will be obliterated. We don't have a minute to spare." There was a brief pause before General Ross's voice crackled through the comms, low and controlled. "Understood. But the shields are not fully operational. We've been trying to reroute power from the backup generators, but—" "Do it now!" Jackson snapped. His eyes locked on the Titan, which was slowly raising its cannon toward New Berlin. "Give us anything you've got. I'm deploying the ground forces now. We'll keep it distracted until the shields activate. We're pushing the systems to their limits. Be ready for a surge." "You've got one shot at this," Ross warned. Jackson didn't need to hear more. He grabbed the comm, his voice cutting through the noise in the command center. "All units prepare for ground assault. We're engaging the Titan directly. Move fast, keep it distracted while the shields come online. This is our last chance." His team scrambled into action, the tension thick in the air. They had no more time for second chances. The massive Titan's cannon fired with an earth-shattering roar, and Jackson's pulse froze for an instant as he watched the bolt of destructive energy streak across the sky. The blast hit with the force of a small sun, a searing burst of white light that engulfed the space above New Berlin. Jackson braced himself for the devastation, but then, just as the bolt of energy was about to slam into the city, a shimmering blue field erupted into existence above the skyline. The defense shield. It absorbed the full brunt of the blast with a thunderous crack, the energy radiating outward in every direction. The shield rippled like water, momentarily bending under the pressure of the cannon's power, but it held. For a fleeting moment, Jackson dared to hope. But the Titan wasn't finished. Its cannon hummed again, and the massive weapon aimed once more. The Titan was relentless. It had been waiting for this move. Jackson shouted, his voice barely heard over the chaotic din. "Deploy all ground units, now!" Jackson's team, along with the rapidly assembled assault forces, raced to the surface. The base erupted with movement as soldiers mounted armored vehicles and prepared heavy artillery. The hum of combat drones filled the air, launching into the skies with weapons ready. Jackson's stomach twisted in a knot as he led the charge toward the Titan. They would need every weapon at their disposal to survive this. The Titan was an ancient weapon. Its sheer size and power dwarfed anything they had in the field. But if they could get close enough, they might be able to exploit its weaknesses. "Target its legs," Jackson commanded, his voice low but filled with determination. "We can slow it down. If we take out its mobility, we have a chance." The first wave of artillery shells fired, slamming into the Titan's massive legs with a resounding crack. The ground shook beneath them, and the Titan's mechanical movements faltered for a moment. The Titan staggered, but its retaliation was swift and brutal. It swung its massive arm in a sweeping arc, sending a shockwave through the field. Jackson dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the debris that exploded outward in a cloud of dust and fire. But then, a series of low hums pierced the air. Jackson looked up. A line of warships, human reinforcements, swept in from the horizon, weapons blazing. Their barrage of firepower rained down on the Titan's upper body, but the weapons bounced harmlessly off its thick plating. It was clear that nothing short of a concentrated effort would stop it. "Keep hitting it! Don't let up!" Jackson shouted. His heart thundered in his chest as the Titan reared up once again, its massive cannon glowing bright, preparing for another devastating blast. Then, a high-pitched whine split the air. A new weapon, one Jackson had never seen before, powered up from the base's central tower, the experimental laser cannon, the last hope. He braced himself. "Please," he thought, "please work." The laser fired. Time seemed to slow as the brilliant beam of energy cut through the air, striking the Titan's chest directly. The impact was deafening, but this time there was no explosion, only the sound of the Titan's systems failing. The light of its cannon flickered, then nothing. The Titan staggered, its massive form buckling under the weight of the attack. The ground beneath it cracked wide open as it collapsed to its knees, its once imposing form now crumpling. For the first time in what felt like eternity, the world held its breath. The Titan was down, but was it enough to stop the oncoming alien fleet? The battle was far from over. Victory or defeat, humanity's struggle is far from over. For a fleeting moment, the battlefield fell silent. The deafening hum of battle subsided as Jackson's eyes locked onto the crumpled Titan. Its once mighty form, now kneeling, seemed a shadow of its former self. The ground beneath it was scorched, a testament to the massive force it had unleashed. The faintest traces of smoke curled from its joints, and the glow in its red eyes flickered, struggling to stay alive. It was down, but for how long? The battle raged overhead as the alien fleet pressed on, determined to claim Earth's final defenses. Their ships darted in and out of the haze of smoke and fire, their shields flashing bright as they evaded human fire. Jackson's eyes stayed fixed on the fallen Titan. The impact of the laser had sent a surge of hope through him, but now there was only uncertainty. The Titans were ancient, built with technology far beyond what humanity understood. They could be more resilient than they seemed. Is it dead? Mara's voice crackled through the comms, but Jackson could only shake his head as he moved forward. The Titan had stopped moving, but its core systems weren't entirely offline. Not yet. It could be waiting for something. Or perhaps, someone. We can't afford to wait around, Jackson muttered, turning to his team. Prepare for immediate reinforcements. Get the power systems up. I want every soldier ready for whatever comes next. His command center was buzzing with activity, but Jackson's focus never wavered from the Titan. His mind raced, pulling together bits of intel. What if it wasn't just a weapon? What if the Titans were more? Suddenly a distant crackle through the air, followed by a low hum. It was subtle, but unmistakable. The Titan was moving again. Jackson's breath hitched in his chest. It was like watching the rise of a god, a deity forged in metal stirring from its slumber. Sir? Mara's voice blared through the comms. It's powering up again. It's... Boom! The ground shook as the Titan's massive body lurched into motion. Its head snapped to attention and the ground trembled beneath its weight. The energy from its chest flared, and Jackson's heart skipped. The core systems weren't completely down. It was awakening, adapting to the laser blast. The Titan was not finished. It was adapting. A series of heavy metallic sounds rang out as the Titan's massive arm rose. The energy cannon was no longer on its shoulder. Instead, it was now integrated into its chest, glowing with an intense pulsing light. It was a shift, a new weapon, born from whatever ancient programming lay buried deep within the machine's depths. We need backup, Jackson shouted. I need everything the fleet has now. The Titan's cannon surged with a horrific, electric hum. Jackson watched in horror as the massive machine aimed downward, not at the ground forces, but at the retreating city of New Berlin. His blood turned to ice. It had a new target. The city wasn't safe. The defensive shield above New Berlin flickered weakly. Jackson's stomach twisted. The shield couldn't hold much longer under the Titan's barrage. He glanced at the sky, knowing the alien fleet was hovering just out of reach, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Commander, the fleet is taking heavy damage. The aliens are pushing hard, Mara said, her voice tight with panic. If we can't disable that Titan soon... A violent shockwave cut her off. The Titan's cannon discharged with a blinding flare of energy. It hit the shield directly, with a sickening sound, sending ripples through the atmosphere. The shield held for a fraction of a second before a final, desperate crack echoed, and the field shattered into nothingness. Jackson watched in disbelief as the Titan prepared to fire again, its weapon primed. No, not now. Not again. Deploy everything we have, Jackson barked. Get to the Titan's core. We'll fight to the end. We cannot let that thing destroy New Berlin. His forces surged forward, a line of humanity's last stand. But just as Jackson prepared to race back into the fray, an unexpected voice echoed through his comms. It was General Ross, the calm in the storm. Jackson, listen to me. We've got one shot. The alien fleet is on the move again. They've just deployed something new. Jackson's mind whirred. New? New? The skyline overhead shifted again. A flash of dark, sleek ships broke through the clouds, large angular shapes that blotted out the sun. They weren't the same ships from earlier. These were different, larger, faster, and bearing strange geometric markings. We've never seen ships like that before, Mara said, her voice a mix of awe and dread. The ships descended, falling in a synchronized pattern. They spread across the horizon in perfect formation like an army of stars. As they neared the battlefield, their hulls began to glow with an eerie, pulsing light. Jackson's blood ran cold as they began to drop massive pods. Weapons? Then, it happened. The sky cracked open with a sound like a thunderclap, and the first of the pods hit the earth with a massive shockwave. The ground split wide as the pods erupted into columns of blinding light and fire. But they weren't weapons, they were soldiers. The alien forces were deploying ground troops. Damn it, Jackson cursed under his breath. The battle wasn't just in the sky anymore. The war had come to their doorstep. The Titans were not the only threat. Now they were facing an invasion from every angle. The true enemy had arrived. "We've got incoming," Jackson growled. "All units, prepare for full assault. Every last one of them." And as the sky rained fire and the ground began to tremble, with the steps of the incoming enemy, Jackson knew one truth. Humanity's survival depended not just on defeating the Titans. It was an all-out war for the future of the Earth. The enemy isn't just at the gates, they've breached them. The ground was shaking again, but this time it wasn't the Titan. It was the arrival of something far worse. Alien soldiers poured out of the massive pods that had splintered the Earth open, their armor reflecting the dying light of the sun. There were hundreds of them. No, thousands, marching in perfect formation, moving with a coordinated precision that sent chills down Jackson's spine. "We need to move, now!" Jackson barked into the comms as he surveyed the advancing alien soldiers. He could hear the sound of their armored footsteps pounding the ground like a war drum. Each step felt like the world was about to fall apart. They weren't just foot soldiers. They were like an organized swarm, a well-trained force that seemed more like an unstoppable machine than individual beings. "Get the drones in the air! Target those soldiers, now!" Mara screamed. Her voice was taut with panic, but there was a hard edge to it. She wasn't giving up, not yet. Jackson's team had already mobilized, but it was clear they were outnumbered. The pods had created an entire army on the ground, and the skies were no safer. Alien ships buzzed overhead, their weapons flashing with deadly intent. The air was thick with the roar of engines, the crackle of weapons discharging, and the constant thud of the Titans' movements. Jackson ran with his squad, his mind racing. The city of New Berlin loomed ahead, but he couldn't stop the tide of soldiers that was sweeping toward them. These soldiers were not the primitive invaders they had faced earlier. Their armor was sleek, like a second skin, and their weapons, strange, metallic and glowing with an otherworldly light, fired with deadly precision. The first wave of soldiers reached Jackson's lines, and the battle erupted into chaos. The sound of laser fire filled the air, mixed with the mechanical screeches of the alien soldiers' war machines. Jackson fired his rifle, the sound of each shot echoing in his ears. The soldiers advanced relentlessly, barely slowing down as the drones began to strafe their ranks, their weapons flaring bright against the darkening sky. "Move, get to the defensive line," Jackson shouted, his voice rising over the din. Behind him, Mara was coordinating airstrikes. A squadron of drones zipped overhead, their weapons firing in rapid succession. But the alien soldiers were relentless. For every one they took down, two more seemed to take its place. The firepower of humanity's forces was being stretched, thin. Jackson's heart raced as he glanced at the skies. The enemy fleet was still hovering, their weapons seemingly locked on Earth's last strongholds. The alien ships were gathering their firepower, preparing for the next wave of destruction. "I need a way to stop those ships," Jackson muttered to himself, his eyes darting to the horizon. He knew the city couldn't withstand another full barrage from the alien fleet. The shield had already failed once. "Sir," Mara called out urgently, snapping him from his thoughts. "The Titan is rising again. It's getting up. It's changing again. It's—" Jackson's blood ran cold. The Titan was moving, yes, but this time something was different. The metal beast's joints hissed with a faint mechanical scream, and its massive frame shifted as if awakening from a slumber. "No," Jackson shouted. "We don't have time for this." The Titan's body cracked and groaned under the weight of its transformation. The cannon that had been once mounted on its chest flared again, a low hum filling the air. Jackson knew that cannon could obliterate New Berlin in an instant. They had to take it down. "Now. Deploy everything we have left." Jackson barked, his voice hoarse with urgency. "We cannot let it move again. We'll take it out from the inside." The remaining human forces regrouped, focusing all their firepower on the Titan's exposed legs. The ground trembled as they laid into its metallic hide, but the Titan's resilience was beyond anything they had expected. The weapons simply bounced off its thick armor, leaving no discernible damage. "General Ross, what's the status on the backup defenses?" Jackson asked through the comms, his voice tight with frustration. "We're pushing everything we've got through the backup generators," Ross replied, his voice strained. "But you need to buy us time. The fleet is on the move, and the new wave of enemy soldiers is pressing forward." Jackson's eyes darted back to the alien army marching toward them. It was a relentless tide, and they were just one piece of it. The true threat wasn't the Titan or even the ships. It was the sheer force of the enemy, coordinated and seemingly unending. And that force was closing in fast. Suddenly, a burst of blinding light from the distance caught Jackson's attention. A new threat, something he had never seen before, was descending from the sky. Massive, organic ships, living ships, plummeted through the clouds. Their skin shimmered with iridescent colors, like some kind of biomechanical creature. As they neared the battlefield, they unleashed a barrage of explosive pods that detonated with sickening force, sending debris and bodies flying in every direction. "Get down!" Jackson screamed, throwing himself to the ground as a series of explosions erupted around them. The shockwave sent him tumbling across the dirt, his ears ringing. But there was no time to recover. As the debris settled and the alien forces advanced once more, Jackson's eyes found the Titan again. It was rising, its massive form looming over the battlefield, and now it was not just a weapon of destruction. It was their final reckoning. "Get to the core!" Jackson yelled, struggling to his feet. "We have one shot at this, one shot!" But as he raced forward with his team, there was no denying the truth. The moment for humanity's survival was slipping away. The storm was here, and it wasn't stopping. Every decision could be their last. Time is running out. The Titan loomed over them like a fallen god, its hulking frame casting a long shadow over the battlefield. Its once glowing eyes flickered to life again, crimson red, as its massive cannons began to power up. Jackson's heart thundered in his chest as he sprinted toward the colossal machine. His mind was a blur of commands, calculations, and pure instinct. There was no other choice but to push forward. Behind him, the chaos continued. The alien soldiers were relentless, cutting down anything that stood in their way. Drones zipped overhead, firing on the advancing troops, but the enemy's numbers seemed infinite. The living ships had torn through the skies, their tentacle-like appendages reaching down to capture whatever they could. The air was thick with the stench of smoke and blood, and Jackson could taste the acrid residue of gunpowder in his mouth. But none of that mattered. His focus was on the Titan. If they didn't stop it now, Earth's last line of defense would fall. "We need to disable its core," Jackson shouted, his voice barely audible over the din of battle. He didn't know how long the Titan could stay down, but they couldn't afford to waste any more time. Mara and the team followed closely behind, their weapons trained on the Titan's armored legs as they fired in unison. The machine barely seemed to notice the barrage. It wasn't just resilient, it was evolving, adapting to their attacks with every passing moment. "I've got a plan," Mara yelled. "There's a weak point in its back, above the shoulder joints. It's shielded, but we might be able to penetrate it with a concentrated burst." Jackson nodded, his breath coming in quick gasps as he ran. They had no choice but to take that chance. The moment they reached the base of the Titan, Jackson could see the scale of the destruction it could still wreak. Its weapons had reconfigured, now aimed at a small cluster of human defenses. The first blast hit a nearby artillery bunker, disintegrating it in an instant. They were running out of time. "Form up," Jackson commanded. "Mara, take the flank. We're hitting that weak point with everything we've got." Mara nodded, and the team split into two groups, moving swiftly through the wreckage. Jackson's heart raced as he pushed forward, dodging incoming fire from alien soldiers. The battlefield was a living nightmare. Everywhere he looked, chaos reigned. But the Titan was still standing, and they needed to get to it before it could. Fire again. We're in position, Mara shouted from the side. Ready to hit it on your mark, sir. Jackson's eyes locked onto the target. He could see the faintest crack in the armor of the Titan's back, a thin seam where the armor had been damaged during the previous assaults. It was their only chance. Do it! Jackson yelled. In an instant, the air was filled with the sound of concentrated firepower as Mara and the team unleashed a torrent of high-powered shots aimed at the weak point. The blast was deafening, a sickening, crackling sound that shook the very air around them. For a moment, it felt like the world itself had stopped. Then the Titan's massive form shuddered, and a violent tremor rippled through the ground. Jackson's breath caught in his throat as the Titan staggered. Its back armor splintered, and for the first time, the glowing core beneath it began to flicker. "Hit it again," Jackson shouted. "Keep hitting it until it cracks wide open." The team didn't hesitate. Another volley of shots rang out, each one striking the damaged area with brutal precision. The Titan's back spasmed, and its energy core sputtered to life, the light within flickering violently as the machine screamed in protest. But just as it seemed the Titan might be finished, a horrible shrieking sound echoed from within. Jackson's gut twisted. The core was weakening, but there was something else inside it. Something alive. What the hell is that? Mara's voice crackled through the comms, a note of disbelief in her tone. Jackson's gaze locked on the Titan's back as something dark and organic began to emerge from the shattered core. Tendrils, black and thick with blood, snaked their way out from the heart of the Titan, slowly unfurling like a monstrous flower. Jackson's stomach churned as he realized the truth. The Titan wasn't just a machine. It was a vessel. A vessel that contained something far worse than they had ever imagined. Before anyone could react, the tendrils shot forward with terrifying speed, lashing out and grabbing hold of the nearest soldiers. The few that were caught were yanked upward and disappeared into the writhing mass of flesh and metal. "No!" Jackson screamed. "Don't let it pull you in!" The remaining soldiers scattered as the tendrils lashed out again, but the Titan's core had begun to pulse with an unnatural rhythm. The mass of organic tendrils seemed to grow stronger with each passing second. The battlefield erupted into chaos as the alien soldiers closed in on the human positions. "I don't care what it takes," Jackson shouted, his voice hoarse with fury. "We end this now." His hands were shaking as he reached for the grenade launcher strapped to his side. But before he could even take aim, the sky overhead split open with an intense flash of light. The enemy fleet had launched another attack. This time, there was no hesitation. Jackson had been too focused on the Titan. The real storm had arrived. The fleet was descending, and with them the endgame was unfolding. The final moments, humanity's resolve will be tested like never before. The sky above New Berlin was burning. Streaks of fire and debris filled the air as the alien fleet descended like a swarm of locusts, and the air itself felt as if it was collapsing under the weight of their presence. Jackson barely had time to register the terrifying sight before the ground beneath his feet trembled again. The Titan was still moving, its mass of organic tendrils reaching out hungrily, as if it was coming alive. "They're everywhere." Mara's voice crackled through the comms, thick with disbelief. "The fleet is opening fire. We're outgunned." Jackson's eyes snapped to the horizon. The alien ship's weapons flared, casting bright glares across the sky as they unleashed their devastating barrages. The shield around New Berlin flickered once more, weakening under the pressure. It was only a matter of time before it would be gone entirely. "Focus on the Titan. We need to take it down now or we're all dead," Jackson barked. His voice was hoarse, but his determination hadn't wavered. His team was still there, still fighting. They had one shot. The Titan's tendrils whipped across the battlefield, decimating everything in their path. Its mechanical body groaned as the black tendrils pulsed with that sickening organic rhythm, and for the first time Jackson realized that this machine wasn't built for war. It was built for something far darker. Whatever it housed inside, whatever entity had fused with it, was something beyond their comprehension. Mara fired her weapon at a tendril, but it barely scratched its surface. "Nothing's penetrating this damn thing," she yelled in frustration. Jackson's mind raced. He had no more tricks, no more surprises. Their weapons weren't enough. The Titan's core was protected by that horrific mass of tendrils. But it wasn't just the Titan they had to worry about. The alien fleet had them cornered, and every passing second felt like a countdown to annihilation. Suddenly a voice crackled, over his comms. It was General Ross. "Jackson, I've got something for you. Don't question it, just do exactly as I say." Ross's voice was grim. "We've been working on a last-ditch weapon, something we've kept secret. It's our only hope. I'm launching it now." Before Jackson could respond, the ground shook violently and the sky exploded into light. The clouds above the battlefield parted like a curtain being drawn back, revealing something truly insane. A massive orbital platform, a gigantic construct of weaponry and engines shot down from the heavens, its sleek angular form nearly blocking out the sun. It was humanity's final ace, a weapon so secret, so dangerous that Jackson had never even known it existed. "What the hell is that?" Mara gasped. Ross's voice was tight with urgency. "Activate the device. It's a one-time use. You need to hit that Titan's core directly. The energy blast is the only way to destroy it. We can't give it time to regenerate." Jackson's breath hitched in his chest. This was it. Their final chance. The fleet was descending, the Titan was still growing stronger, and the world itself was on the brink of collapse. He had to make this count. He didn't hesitate. "Mara, get those drones into position. I'm taking the shot." Mara's response was a split second later. "Got it. We've only got one shot at this, Commander. Make it count." Jackson pushed forward, leading his team toward the Titan. The ground was thick with smoke, debris, and the dead, but he couldn't afford to look back. His eyes were locked on the Titan's writhing form, its energy core now exposed and glowing with a sickening, pulsating light. It was alive. It was too alive. With every step, the hum of the alien ships grew louder, more deafening. Jackson could feel the pressure mounting. The shield around New Berlin was flickering, its collapse imminent. The Titan's tendrils were becoming more aggressive, and the alien soldiers had surrounded their position. The battle was closing in. He reached for his grenade launcher, his hands trembling with the weight of what he was about to do. The drones above were already diving toward the Titan, focusing their fire on the vulnerable points of its armor. Jackson ran, pushing forward through the chaos, his weapon raised. "Cover fire!" he shouted to his squad, and they responded immediately. Lasers streaked through the air, carving through the battlefield as they tried to keep the alien forces at bay. Jackson reached the Titan, his heart racing. The core was pulsing dangerously, and the organic tendrils snapped around him, but he dodged them, his instincts kicking in. He aimed his launcher at the exposed heart of the Titan. "Now, Jackson, do it now!" Ross's voice came through the comms, urgent and strained. In one fluid motion, Jackson fired. The shot cut through the air, and in an instant, everything changed. The explosion was deafening. A shockwave of energy erupted from the Titan's core, and the battlefield was bathed in blinding light. Jackson was thrown off his feet, tumbling across the ground as the entire world seemed to shatter around him. When the light finally faded, the Titan was gone. Its massive form was no more than a crumpled heap of twisted metal and scorched earth. But as the dust settled, the full weight of their victory, or what was left of it, hit him. The alien fleet was retreating, but the cost had been catastrophic. The city was in ruins, the ground was littered with bodies, and humanity had won. But at what price? Jackson struggled to his feet, the ringing in his ears slowly fading. He looked around at the devastation, the ruined landscape, and the scarred earth. The sky above was clear now, but the battle had left its mark. He turned toward his squad, his voice hoarse. "We fought for this. We survived. And that means something. We still have hope. But this war is far from over." The horizon was still, dark with the retreating fleet. But for now, humanity had survived. And in the heart of the storm, Jackson Reeve realized one thing: Earth's last stand had just begun.